In this video, I'm going to talk about the Honda CB350H-ness. The topics I will cover are the CB350 specs, what boxes we provide with the bike, who should choose the CB350, my controversial rant about powerful ADV bikes, who shouldn't choose the CB350, comfort on this bike, why I love air-cooled engines, and what I personally use this bike for. So let's get started. To begin, the CB350H-ness is an air-cooled engine that fires out 21 horsepower. It weighs 181 kilograms, has a gas tank size of 15 liters, and a seat height of 800 millimeters. Dual discs, dual ABS, and traction control. I don't want to get too bogged down in what all of this means, but just a quick overview. 21 horsepower is very little in the real world. This is no rocket ship. But that is partly why I think it is so good for Vietnam. For context, a Honda NX500 is 47 horsepower, a Honda XR150 is 13 horsepower, and a CRF 300L is 27 horsepower. The truth is that most clients who are booking the Honda NX500 would be far happier, or at the very least, far safer on this Honda CB350. I think if you are someone on the fence about your driving level when it comes to Vietnamese roads, then this is the safe choice. And that is the main reason it is in our fleet. It fits on the roads well here and cruises like all the other bikes on the streets. Whereas a Honda NX500 is quite a large weapon of a bike for Vietnam. We'll come back to power later, but for now, moving on. A 15-liter gas tank is huge. And this is the first bike I've personally ever driven that didn't need refueling every day. Gas is cheap in Vietnam, so it's really no big deal, I suppose, but it is quite cool just how far you can drive on this thing and how cheap that will work out over a journey. It is very efficient, that is for sure. The seat height of 800 millimeters is very low to the ground, and compare this to the Honda NX500 of 830 millimeters. Anyone can drive the CB350. It doesn't matter what your height is. And this becomes very, very important when it comes to off-road. And I'll also be talking about that a little bit later as well. Dual disc, expected and normal. The brakes work really well. ABS is completely useless in Vietnam for all models of bikes. The clay just makes it redundant here. If customers understood this, then I would just disable it on everything we have. But there you go. And same goes for traction control. Vietnam's clay brings that to the point where it is redundant and just doesn't work. These sorts of electronics are marketing gimmicks at best when it comes to the real world in places like Vietnam. That's my strong opinion. I don't know what it's like over in the West. Okay, so that's the specs out of the way. Let's go a bit deeper. So we provide two 28-liter side boxes like this with the bike, and it has a small rack on the back as well. We also put engine guards and crash guards on the bike, and the next round of sprockets on the back will be slightly larger than OEM. But basically, everything on the bike is stock, with no fiddling. Okay, so who is the CB350H-ness for? This is so hard to explain, because many of you watching this video will be on 800cc or more motorbikes. The roads are narrow, slow, crazy traffic, and clay is everywhere. Big capacity bikes just don't work in Vietnam. We have so many riders book the NX500 and downgrade to the XR150 when they land in Vietnam and face the realities. What the CB350 is doing in our fleet is filling that gap of the average weekend rider who can ride a big bike back home, but suddenly in Vietnam, the world is turned upside down and they just don't feel confident anymore. You don't want to go all the way back down to a toy 150cc motorbike, and so this is the compromise that we have, the 350H-ness. So now I'm going to go a bit off topic, but it does need to be said to properly explain this motorbike. And many of you watching will not like what I'm going to say, but I'm going to give it a go anyway. I get told quite a bit that the Honda NX500, which pumps out 47 horsepower, is not powerful enough. But yet, I happily drive around on 150cc motorbikes, and the ticket tour guides use the 150 for everything. And no client, regardless of model they are on, can leave them or me behind. The truth is, power is about the rider, not the bike. And if you don't understand this, then please book an off-road lesson to learn how to use the clutch to extract more power out of any machine. I cannot believe I can't leave you behind.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll go a little bit faster. He's still there.
Yeah.
A little bit faster. He's still there. Anyway, we are really fortunate in Southeast Asia to be given low capacity, lightweight bikes, which frankly most of the time outperform high capacity and heavy bikes. And I think a lot of people in the West are pushed straight onto overly powerful motorbikes with far too much electronics and gadgets to control all of that power for you, and everything just adds weight. I already said earlier in this video, when it comes to the real world and Vietnam's terrain, all this electronic nonsense like ABS and traction control doesn't actually work. It's a gimmick, even on this bike. So maybe it works somewhere else, but it doesn't work here. Anyway, back to the point. A good driver can get power out of any bike. But to explain this bike, I want to describe power in a slightly different way. I think a better way to describe it, rather than calling it power, is engine characteristics. The NX500 is quite a playful, high-revving bike, for a Honda ADV bike anyway. The CB350H-ness, on the other hand, is a low-revving thumper. It has absolutely no childish play to it at all. But this is what makes it perfect for amateur riders in a country like Vietnam. The bike isn't going to abuse you for making a mistake. It's going to be forgiving. To make this video, I just did a 6-day north trip on this bike, and I absolutely loved the rumble of this engine. And in many ways, it helps me enjoy the scenery just that little bit more. I drive the bike to its characteristics, and I'm not in a rush. But honestly, even in a rush, it can be fun. We are getting there with this Rant, but let's look at the Himalayas for a second. And what do they drive on the tours out there? It's the Royal Enfield Bullet. Now let's look back at Vietnam again. In the mountains, it's actually the Honda Wind. Similar frame design to the CB350H-ness in many ways. The point is, in countries where off-road is a way of life, not something for fun, the bikes are actually low to the ground and not powerful. They putt, 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 putt their way through the terrain. Yeah. Can't control the front wheel at all. In Vietnam's clay, which is no different from driving on ice, being able to put your feet down and putt, putt, putt your way through a landslide is an absolute lifesaver. Less kg, lower center of gravity, and less power than a normal ADV bike. This is a win-win-win. You have to realize, in a place like the north of Vietnam, you can go from a perfectly paved highway to driving over a clay landslide, which has been carved out for locals on Honda Waves. These tracks are no more than 1/2 meter wide and super slippery. Traditional ADV bikes that you're used to just don't fit on this kind of terrain, and they are so heavy. So this CB350 just crushes the average ADV bike you'll all be used to, including the Honda NX500. I'm not going to sit here and say it's better at off-road than an NX500, or let's say a BMW GS, or I can even go as far as saying a Yamaha Tenere. But what I will say is it's way easier and way safer for normal riders when it comes to slippery terrain. I hope that gets my point across at least a little bit. It's a hard topic to explain. All right, so who's this bike not for? I think for 2 up on a bike, you are definitely better with something bigger, like the Honda NX500. So we'll get that out of the way. I think though, there are riders, not many though, who actually do need more power than a 350 and can also utilize it. So for these people, feel free to go up a level. Or the people who are used to playful bikes, let's say a Kawasaki Ninja or some sort of high-performance Ducati. Yes, you're going to have more fun on something more powerful, that is for sure. Then I suppose there is the person sitting there who drives a 1250cc motorbike back home and is listening to this thinking, I'm perfectly happy on my heavy, high capacity bike. Thank you very much. Fine, so you can take the biggest capacity bike the rental company has on offer. No problem, and I get it. But for everyone else, consider the CB350, please, because it will help lower the crash ratio at Tiggett. This bike next to me has 12,000 kilometers on it and still has the original mirrors. I don't think any of our NX500s have made it that far without a reasonable size crash. All right, let's talk about the comfort on the CB350. Despite being low to the ground, the seating position is very comfortable for me. I will show my legs on the CB350 and my legs on the NX500, and you'll get the idea of why I like sitting on this bike. The seat is very squishy and comfortable, and the suspension is perfectly capable at eating up potholes at speed. All I will say is that having boxes and load on the back did make the front wheel lighter and more jittery than I would have hoped. But in reality, this is probably the same for all bikes. So pack light and definitely don't use top boxes on this one. Let's move on to air-cooled engines and just why I love them so much. Air-cooled engines don't break. What actually fails on rental motorbikes is liquid-cooled bikes where gaskets fail or some sort of coolant leak causing the radiator to run out of fluid, the bike overheats, and boom, bye-bye engine. Some of the time this is the company's fault, but at the same time, without going into specifics about why, it can also be the rider's fault. Air-cooled bikes just don't really have this problem. And even a major gasket leak, like the cylinder head gasket on an air-cooled bike, you can actually continue the holiday. Whereas a liquid-cooled bike, a cylinder head gasket leak would be game over. Basically, there are a lot less scenarios where the bike can fail to a holiday-stopping level. This is a very good thing when using a rental motorbike over a long journey. So to wrap this video up, let's talk about when I would use this motorbike. So if I'm doing a road-based route research project, my weapon of choice these days is this exact bike. And the reason is, I know 90% of the time I'm going to be on tarmac. This for me rules out all the 150cc motorbikes. But because it is a route research project, I sometimes find myself on landslides or mildly difficult roads. And for this, I want to be able to safely putt myself out of a mess. I am not standing up and I'm not trying to look cool. I can do that on my KTM 2-stroke. I just want to survive and get out safely. So one last thing, I don't advocate for driving with no safety gear, but if you do have a lot of experience under your belt, then again, the characteristics of this bike mean you don't really need to gear up like you would do on a bigger bike. I treat this bike like I do a Honda Blade scooter, shorts, t-shirt, and trainers. I don't recommend that, by the way. But my point is, you just don't need the full-blown road gear on a bike like this. Even the Honda XR 150, I would properly gear up for, and definitely the Honda NX500. So for me, I enjoy the flexibility and comfort that I have on this bike, knowing that I am very much in control and feeling incredibly safe on it. So when would I use something more powerful than the 350? Well, when I know that my entire journey will be on big open roads with no gambles and no landslides. So then I would properly gear up. To sum up, the CB350 HNUS is a great bike. Thanks for watching. It really kills me to have to stop and make content on a road like this, but there you go. Middle of nowhere, kind of semi-dirty track on each side, but that's how I make money, I suppose. But there is not a single soul on this road. And this has traction. This is a driver's road. Oh yeah. I had to really mentally bring myself to stop to make this video. Now let's go.